Alderman Martin.
Present.
Alderman Bosley.
Present.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Present.
Alderwoman Rice.
Present.
Alderman Todd.
Present.
Chairman Cohn.
Present.
Yes.
7 present, you have sworn.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I really appreciate having the full committee in attendance this morning. That's quite the feat. It makes me quite happy to have all of you here.
Don't send us those threatening notes.
I will stop sending threatening notes. I just wanted to first thank all of you for your participation on this committee. I know historically this committee has really been responsible for board bills that are related to our parks, and then also we have the funds that come in through Prop P that are decided for both the Metro Parks and the Neighborhood Parks funds. And so I'm sure we'll be having discussions around those in the future as well. One of the topics that I emailed the committee members about was actually doing tours of our parks. And I heard from a number of committee members that they were willing to do so. I spoke with the Director of Forestry, Parks and Rec, and he is very much amenable to providing us with transportation and things of that nature to give us a tour of our city's park system. I was thinking that we could hit all 107 parks, but the director or commissioner shared with me that that's probably a little bit too ambitious given the resource constraints that we have in the city. So I wanted to, just touch base with everyone while we're here. Is that something that you all would want to do? Shake nodding heads. Okay, sounds good.
I'm with you.
Okay, and then how best do you think we should handle that? Since we can't hit all 107 parks, do you think that we should just hit like neighborhood parks or smaller parks, a mixture of the parks that have rec centers? I was just gonna go through the committee roster and just get your thoughts in terms of what you think would be the best approach. And I'll start with Alderwoman Tyus.
And I have a point of order just
Sure.
before we get started, because there is no Exhibit A.
That's what Heather just went to go.
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, and because we in rules are turning down things and holding things up, has to have everything. So when it comes to being engrossed, it does not get engrossed without everything, no blanks.
For Bill 21.
Right.
Yeah.
So even to get passed out of here, I'm requesting that we have an Exhibit A.
I
I
think
think
he's
that
getting
that
it
would-
right now.
Okay.
I'm surprised that we don't have one.
We don't have a copy of the Exhibit A, which is the lease agreement. We don't have a copy of it.
There should be
Not
a
on our,
copy
it's
of
not in
it.
front of us.
All we have is the bill
board
saying
bill.
we approve it.
And that there is an Exhibit A.
Yes.
Yeah,
The
so
clerk is
So-
working on it.
the clerk is getting a copy, great.
Okay.
So, speaking to your question now, I liked your idea of going, because I thought we could go in sections. Like if we're in Southeast St. Louis, do all the parks in Southeast St. Louis. It may take us longer, do the parks in Southwest St. Louis, so break the city up and do. I would like to see small and large parks. I'm probably one of the few people, I lived in the Central Quarter, South St. Louis, and North St. Louis. Not from here, but lived in all 3 neighborhoods. So I've been to a lot of the parks, but I think it's kind of a neat idea. And I've been on parks since I came back and never had anybody bring that up, and I think that's a good idea. And if it's gonna be constraints, we might be able to, like, a lot of the North St. Louis churches have buses and things like that. I might be able to ask some of my churches if they would donate a bus for us.
Okay.
But we gotta check our ethics rules to see that we can allow that, okay? But if they can, if that's allowed, then I can ask them about donating a bus. We
Great.
buy gas, and they, or
Okay.
something like that. So
Yeah.
I like going to see all the parks.
Okay. Alderwoman Martin.
I agree, it's a great idea, I'm looking forward to it. I suppose we could ask each alderman to pick which park they would like us to see, and we each pick the park from our ward. I think we should do best and worst in each ward, so.
Good idea too. Alderman Bosley.
I think it's a great idea also. We got a lot of parks. Some of us have like 4 or 5 of them. I definitely love the idea of doing like the best and worst, but I think it also would be nice to do maybe a few more but make sure that we kind of split them up between the actual city, north, south, and west side, so we can get a real good idea of the way that the parks differ from, kind of around the area, so we can maybe take some things from one side and bring it to the other side. But I think we need to visit maybe at least 20 or 30 of them. I think that'd be, because I don't even think I've been to 30 parks in the city ever. But yeah, yes, dope idea.
Cool. Thank you. Alderwoman Navarro.
I agree, it's a great idea, and in addition to everything else that's been said, I think it would be helpful to hear from the Parks Department to be able to demonstrate to us some of the things, like, oh, this is a new facility we put in here, or this is a partnership we have with MDC that's working in this park, because I'm sure we're aware of, what we hear from our constituents and our experiences in our parks, but it would be interesting to hear from them as well. Things that they've been trying, and what they see is working and what they see as, areas of improvement here, what some of their priorities are as well. But yeah, I'm on board.
Thank you. Alderwoman Rice.
Yeah, I think asking each of the aldermen, I mean, obviously the ones at the table, but then everyone else too, their sort of best and worst suggestions for us would be really helpful, as a sort of a starting point. And then, yeah, making sure that we have Parks Department staff there, or rangers, or whoever has the most intimate knowledge of that park that can help give us the background on what's going on there. I think that's great. So I'm in.
And then Alderman Todd.
I think we should at least visit one park in each ward and decide, and let the other person pick the park that we want to visit.
Great.
I have an addendum after you.
Sure.
I was just gonna say, if we're not gonna see all of them, I think we should see all the large parks. So, because we have Tower Grove, Forest Park, that gets money, Fairground, O'Fallon. So I think we should hit, even whatever, we should hit all the large parks.
I think some you can just drive by, like South Square, Belle Reve. I mean, there's really not that much to see. Just
Yeah,
drive
Hill
by,
Street Park.
see the drugs, see the prostitutes, and move on. But that's important for everyone to see the activity in everybody's ward.
Yeah.
I think.
Hill Street Park is one of my favorites. It's just a piece of land in the middle of the sunset. So,
Okay.
It's known.
so what I have, just kind of cursory notes based off of the conversation here. What I'll do is I'll send an email out to the full board of aldermen requesting that each of those 28 let me know of any parks that they would like for us as a committee to take a look at. And then when we get those scheduled, then I'll also invite those particular aldermen to join us if they'd like to, host us in their parks if they would like. But I'll encourage them to provide us with, at least 2 parks, one being the best and one being the worst, or what they perceive to be the best and worst in their ward. And then we'll try and hit a minimum of 20 to 30 parks, throughout our tour. And then I like the idea of making sure that we're also hitting all of the major parks, because those would be part of the Metro Parks funding opportunity. And so maybe doing that in conjunction with, here are some of the plans in place for those larger parks that we're identifying funding opportunities for. And then I believe we have Kim Hagley, who's the Parks Director here. I believe she was planning on joining us for the tour anyway. So I'm sure she'll be able to share her wisdom and knowledge of each one of our parks in terms of its history, its how it came to be a park. There's actually, and I'm not sure how many of the folks around the table are familiar, but the Parks Department actually has some really great write-ups on the various parks on our city's website. And Mark Groth also took an opportunity a few years back to tour each of the 107 parks in the city's park system and did a write-up and took photos of each of our parks. And I think that some of that was incorporated into the city's website as well. So if you haven't, I encourage you to go take a look at that, but we'll have that information on hand for any of the parks that we go visit. And that covered my last point, which just the background on each park. So So we'll go ahead and start trying to put some information together once we get the recommendations from our fellow members of the board. And I'll work with Greg and Kim and this committee to make sure that the scheduling is ideal for everyone, so.
I
Alderwoman
request that we
Tice.
also have the funding for each park, because some parks get double dips. They don't, I've been here since they got the original funding, so they don't just get one, some of them get two. In fact, several of them do, okay? So we should see how much funding the parks get in relationship to other parks.
Do you want that for the tour? I was thinking we could have that discussion when we get to the funding cycle for neighborhood parks and metro parks.
But if I could have, well, they can get them really easy, and
Yeah.
I probably have most of the old ones anyway since it started. But that will show you why some parks are so beautiful and other parks are stressed out and starving. Because I was always opposed to the way they set up the funding for the parks. It's very unfair.
We're gonna do that. I would like to add, onto that piece that we get how much certain items are from each park, like benches, water fountains,
'Cause they
things like
charge.
that from BPS. That information, because from north to south, it could be a major difference,
Correct.
especially in particular parks. Like I've seen water fountains go from 3,000 to 6,000 based on BPS estimates, and it's weird because they're the exact same structure and they're doing the same amount of work. So it'd be interesting to know what everybody is paying in those parks.
I have a handout, but I also would like to make sure Matt just passes out what
Let me
I'm
take
talking
a look.
about. You want to see it, but it's legit. I'm not talking about fire and brimstone. Not yet, unless we don't get results from what I'm talking about. Okay, so this handout deals with the fact that the 18th ward I'm gonna speak about, and and the gentleman knows about it, has been totally, since we passed all these taxes, hasn't got and we want our money retroactive. We passed these taxes in 2005. I'm gonna just go through it and we didn't get anything until 2013 when I had a sit-in in the Parks Department. And then that was 8-cent sales tax, and we paying taxes, so I don't want anybody sitting up here talking about, this is not charity. And 18th Ward paid taxes, I can only speak for the 18th Ward. We paid taxes for this. Then we had a $700,000 for neighborhood parks, and we got zero. And then you skip on down to $1 million for crime prevention program, passed was to include program for youth and crime prevention, got absolutely zero. Barnes Jewish Hospital Works Program, 2008, $1,200 to be spent for park improvement and recreation north of Delmar, zero. $300,000 for recreation, zero. Proposition P was passed in 2013. $2,500,000, we got zero. What is my point? My point is, we talk about crime, we talk about crime prevention. We have absolutely no supervised activities, organized supervised activities in the park. We have absolutely no equipment. And then we had a park at Turner where they tore out the bathroom, built another house, I guess, with no bathroom. Guess what the people are doing? I don't want to, I know it's early in the morning, I don't want to say what they're doing.
Okay, we get it.
But, and that's against the law. But besides, so they tear it out, I don't know how many hundreds, it had to cost more than $100,000 just to build a house, whatever they call it. The point is, I want, for my ward, every penny from 2005 to now.
So just to
I want us to
be
look into
clear,
that and
so
find out where that money went, and
this committee wouldn't deal with the Prop S funds, which is that $1 million in crime prevention funds, which for your knowledge, the prior alderman of the 18th ward was
Was the
actually
chair of public
responsible
safety.
for allocation of those funds. And I was on the subcommittee for the last 3 years that dealt with those funds, and a large majority of them did go north of Del Mar. And actually specifically to some organizations that are based in the 18th ward that do programming with youth. But, you know, in terms of the 8 cent sales tax rate, you know, I think it would be appropriate when we start to have those conversations around allocation that we do look historically at where funds have been spent and where parks are, you know, and I think we'll have those conversations. Greg, when do those typically start?
Kim's in the middle of it.
We're working on them right now from
You'll
when
have
we
a
met
say,
in
we
Ward
actually,
Capital
our
meetings.
committee votes
Okay.
some money,
Yeah.
that only our
So-
committee votes.
The onus is on 2 individuals, so to speak, at Work Capital. The alderman needs to be there, or the alderwoman, and Kim Hagley and our staff. A lot of those discussions, the vast majority of those discussions for monies happen then. So that's when it's very important to have those discussions.
But, so those funds though come before this committee for approval, correct?
Right.
So, and I'll work offline with the two of you, but I think it would be helpful to have just even the last 5 years or maybe 10 if it's easy to
I'll
do.
go back as far as I can.
But not just where funds have been allocated, but I know each year you all send out a letter to the full Board of Aldermen requesting their feedback with regard to their own parks. So if you have a response rate in terms of who is sending in, you know, information for those funds, I think that that would also be important to review. You know, so we'll get, Alderman, we'll get to that, certainly, as we start to have the discussions around funding. You know, you and I can have an offline conversation about what some of these are more specific points are so that I can have a better understanding of it and try and address those concerns with you.
The last thing is that I know that I think that as a department, I know that the rangers have been placed under public safety.
We would
But
be
I
having
think
that
I
conversation
think we
too.
need to have a conversation. I haven't seen one ranger in our toilets, even though their work are closed. So never open. So we need to have a conversation about where are the rangers and why aren't any rangers in our park. And you ask me how I know, because I've been driving through the park for the last, I won't mention how long, just checking. It's been, and I haven't seen a ranger yet, but we've been helping. Our tax dollars pay for rangers too. So I want to see some rangers, and they said they can't open the bathroom unless they have rangers. Well, if we had activities, we would have somebody to watch the bathroom while we had activities, so we need supervision, even if it means moving some of those people who are in offices out into the community.
So that is a fair point as well in terms of a topic of discussion, and that is actually a conversation that the director and I had very briefly, probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, with regard to the control of the park rangers, because currently they are rolling up underneath the police department, which is not necessarily within the purview of this particular committee, but the parks are. And so I think it would be fair to have a conversation with the chief of police with regard to the ranger resources within the department, because that's specifically what they're there to do. And if they're all in Forest Park and not patrolling Carondelet or Fairground or O'Fallon, or even some of our neighborhood parks, then it creates a challenge. So I think that that's an excellent point, and it's certainly a topic that we can take up as a committee to have a discussion with the chief about. So I was hoping that the discussion portion of our meeting would allow Alderwoman Clark Hubbard to join us. She was in a meeting in North County this morning, and I know she's en route to City Hall. But it's been about half an hour now, and I don't want to take up too much of the committee's time waiting for someone to come join us. So I will go ahead and say that we'll now discuss Board Bill 21. I don't have a clerk on me at the moment.
And
so-
we don't have
Yes, I don't have
attachments.
exhibit.
And, oh, we still
Don't have
what?
attachments.
Oh, these are copies
Right.
of the, are those the contract?
That's the operating lease agreement.
Okay, do we have more than one?
Yeah, he's running.
Okay.
By the way, every committee I'm on, I will ask for them, and if they don't have them, you know we're gonna keep them in.
Yes, ma'am.
We're not gonna get them enrolled, so they might as well do them here.
Okay, so they are currently in the process of printing off the operating lease agreements, which is the appendix for Board Bill number 21. So we will not take up Board Bill 21 until we have the appendices available, or appendices available. And if the committee doesn't mind, I'm going to just check in with Alderwoman Clark Hubbard to see where she is. Sure, we can take a 5-minute recess.
Okay.
While we're waiting.
I'll be right back.
One with its appropriate appendix, and I'm going to allow the director to provide background on the agreement while folks are reading it.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Alderwomen and Aldermen. Prior to my tenure in the position, there's an ordinance established, I believe, in 2007, 2008, about West End Recreation Center at Enright and Union, which used to be a city-run rec center. Due to decisions back at that time, and I don't know how much that preceded the 2007-8 ordinance, if you will, with Mr. Johnson and his foundation, there was that decision made. So there was a competitive process, to my knowledge, to possibly have a provider come in the center and provide activities, positive activities for the folks in that neighborhood. So that's what established the lease. The lease expired, and so we needed to do a new process, and the decision was made to do a competitive RFP process, which our department did conduct. One proposal was submitted, if you will, from the Demetrius Johnson Foundation, and I was remiss. I'd like to introduce a few people at this point. I have Kim Hagley, who's been mentioned, the Commissioner of Parks, Mr. Demetrius Johnson with the Demetrius Johnson Charitable Foundation. He has been the incumbent, if you will, or he has had the lease prior to this discussion, and Mr. Sonny Metcalf, who works closely with Mr. Johnson at the facility. So, one proposal was received. We conducted all the RFP committee hearings, and we selected Mr. Johnson to, in fact, continue as the provider. We realize it's a 5-year lease or more, so it needed to come before this committee, and we're here today. Just a couple highlights. I meet with Mr. Johnson occasionally. I do visit the center. Kim Hagley has visited the center. Kathy Sullivan, our executive assistant who reports to me, is a good liaison with Mr. Johnson and his foundation. It's his commentary, but I think it's factual. I don't recall in my brief 4-year tenure as director ever getting a complaint about Mr. Johnson or the facility. I think arguably there's some rough areas, and Mr. Johnson and Mr. Metcalf would say that themselves. There's some rough areas in that general neighborhood with some youth, as we have citywide in certain pockets. So when you come in his center and he conducts his programs with the youth and with the various folks that come there, and his turkey giveaways, et cetera, we never get called about concerns. It's a safe haven there. It's a beautiful old building. It's not brand new and it's not modern, but it's still city owned, and he does a really good job there. I think he's well known in the community. I don't want to embarrass him, but he's a former NFL professional player, so he has great contacts in the city and the region for folks that come to assist him and go to the center and share their time and talents with these children. Perhaps at-risk children or children that just want a good chance to succeed in life and build their aspirational levels. So that's what we're here to do, to continue the process, do another 5-year lease with the option of another 5 years, and we can open it up to any questions from the committee.
Yeah, I want to thank Mr. Johnson for his hard work in the city. It's exceptionally admirable what you've been able to do. For those of you that aren't familiar, and I'm sure the alderwoman from the 26th ward will also, I'll give you some time to speak about this, but the building was originally built as the Young Hebrew Men's Association and was then taken over by the city and managed by the city for a long time. But I guess it was about 5 years ago you took over operations, and it's been remarkable to see the gift that you've been able to provide, and the work that you've been able to provide to our city and its youth. So I especially just want to make a comment and thanks for that. Alderwoman Clark
Chairman,
Hubbard.
can I have a follow-up
Sure.
comment to that? Since you broached that, the former owner, before the city took it over, I think it's very fair to say, and some in the room may know, some may not, but Mr. Johnson has met those folks before. He has met them recently, and they wanted to come take a look at the facility. Where that goes in the future, Demetrius, Sonny, Kim, and I don't know, because it's city-owned property, but they did tour it. They were I wasn't there that day, they were very impressed with Mr. Johnson and Mr. Metcalf's efforts. And if in fact that facility would ever become privately owned, I think the sentiment was they would never want Mr. Johnson to leave that neighborhood and the activities he performs. But that is just commentary. That's what I was told from the tour. But that could be 20 years from now or never, or 5 years from now. Mr. Johnson, I don't want to put you on, was that a fair statement?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the subsequent.
No, I appreciate that. Alderman Clark Hubbard, if there's anything that you would like to add about the board bill or.
Absolutely. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm so glad I made it in time. I did not want to miss this because I am here 100% supporting Demetrius Johnson and Sonny Metcalf and the work they're doing at the Demetrius Johnson Foundation Center. I'm sorry. Eddie Mae Binion, you need to put proper names on it because out of respect, that was his mom, and he named the foundation after his mom, and the work she did, and he's standing on her shoulders. He does, like Shane said, admirable work in our community, and to speak to the center itself in the 26th ward for the children that it feeds and the children that it services in that neighborhood, they really don't have another choice. They don't have another choice. The closest city center, free center is Woe, and that's not safe for a child to walk from Union and Delmar to Kings Highway and Martin Luther King. The programs, the community partnerships he's formed, I mean, it's unmatched. And when you go in there, and he's right, if the center is nice, it's well kept, it's clean, the energy in there is amazing. I've spoken with children there. I've been to his events before. He does several events, not just one year, but he does the summer camps. He feeds them year round. He does entertainment enrichment, teaches them about the business of entertainment. He has his Christmas events, his Thanksgiving events. He does stuff year round in the community, and I think that speaks to his commitment to the community and his commitment to the city as a whole. So thank you, Demetrius. Thank you, Sonny. I'm glad I was here to vouch for you all, and I'll take questions just like anybody else will with this. I support it 100%.
Great. And actually, I just had a thought, which is not necessarily germane to the board bill, but while we're going through the questions about this, I'd like for each one of the committee members to express whether or not they think that this is a decent idea. But as we're talking about the lease agreement for this particular recreation facility, I am curious if the members of this committee would be willing to have future meetings rotate through the different recreation centers that we have to give some exposure to what the rec centers are, where they are, and the conditions that they're in. So, our next meeting could be at the O'Fallon Rec Center or the Demetrius Johnson Foundation Center. So as we go through questions about Board Bill 21, if you could just let me know whether or not you would be amenable to that, I'd appreciate it. And I'll start off with Alderwoman Tyus.
I'm still, so I want to pass because I still, I read everything before I vote, so I'm only on page 5.
Alderwoman Martin.
I don't have any questions, but I would very much like that to do that.
You guys do care about us, don't you? Our facilities,
I
I'm
think that's a
teasing.
great idea. I
Thank you,
think that's a great
Alderwoman.
idea.
Very nice.
Alderman Bosley,
I would like to pass right now until I got 2 more pages to read.
okay. Alderwoman Navarro,
I'm also still reading, but overall supportive. I don't have any questions right now.
okay. Alderwoman Rice,
Just a question, is there any big thing that has changed in this lease agreement from the previous lease agreement with the foundation?
We did revise it, but I
Okay.
would say nothing of significance.
Okay.
If you would like, I'm not putting homework on you, Alderwoman, but if you'd like to look at the previous lease and compare, but we did make a few revisions. I don't recall anything of significance because the one was working okay, satisfactorily, if you will, so I saw no need to make wholesale changes.
Okay, can you speak to some of those changes even if they're major?
I mean, literally
Oh, just words,
verbiage.
okay,
Yes.
okay.
To my
that's fine.
knowledge. Now, I can come back before the committee or send an email to the committee when I compare and contrast, but I'm fairly, very confident.
Okay.
There's nothing you would say, wow, this was a major thing you
Sure.
pulled out or added.
Okay.
Mr. Johnson, with your review, did you see anything major omitted or added?
No, I thought everything was equally what we had in the past.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. And so just kind of overviewing, to give my colleagues a little bit more of a chance to glance over. So it's a nominal lease for, the foundation, but then the foundation is responsible for repairs up to $10,000. And what happens at the $10,000 over and above that? Does the city is then responsible for any major?
Correct, and we have done some repairs there.
Okay.
City-owned. Mr. Johnson, to my knowledge, has some folks that have come in and done what I would call basic things, what they run by us. But anything of a significant nature, yes, it would fall on us.
Okay. And then the previous owners, when you were just talking about, the potential if this place were to go private, is that something, I guess we're not usually in the place where we're selling off city buildings and that kind of thing, but is that something that would be contemplated as a future positive for the city, for the foundation, for the building, or is that they were just touring for the fun of it and that came up?
That is an outstanding question.
Okay.
And I can speak for myself, and I'm sure some others, if that became privately owned, and it is a magnificent building, in my opinion. If it became privately owned, I would be fully supportive of that.
Okay.
And to perhaps keep Mr. Johnson, if in fact he's fortunate enough to get through the process to be the provider, to still be entrenched in the neighborhood. Because the reason why I answer it that way is that building, if it had a lot of money thrown at it, which we're not planning to do because we're just doing repairs to keep him subsistence, if you will. That sounds negative, but keep him going without any dangers or safety hazards. That building deserves renovation and repair, and it is magnificent. And we'd be happy to take you through it, even when his staff is there, of course. Kim, what is your opinion of the building if in fact it became privately owned with more potential for improvement?
Yes, I mean, it's beautiful. And the rental opportunities too, I know you do some of that, DJ, it just would expand exponentially.
It has a double gym, I digress, it has a double gym where I would like to find somebody, including myself, to find a good one that compares to a double gym. That stage area where you have music, where I've been to an event, is magnificent. It's something you don't see built anymore.
Sure.
So it's a building that's already looking good, it just needs a lot of improvement.
Sure. Old buildings are expensive to upkeep and
Right.
keep in good shape. So
I'd hate to see it shuttered.
Sure. And then as far as the subleases, does the city have any policies as far as what types of organizations or tenants that the city allows in a sublease, or?
I don't know if there's I don't think there's a specific policy, but Mr. Johnson would have to run anything by me and
Okay.
us, so to speak.
Okay.
I don't believe at this time you have any subleases going, but if he'd entertain one, they'd have to be vetted through us.
Okay.
And I don't even know if you have any prospects.
No, we have no interest in doing that because the safety of the kids, that's what we put first. So we don't go out and invite folks to come into the building like that.
Okay, that's very helpful. I don't think that I have any further questions. this sounds great, and I commend you for the work that you do there, and for upkeeping the building and all of the vital services there. And I would say I'm also very supportive of going and checking out the rec centers, especially with all of the programming that they're doing right now. I'd love to get hands-on and see what's there, so.
Great. Alderman Todd.
I'm 100% against privately owned the building ever, any city property ever being privately owned, because the taxpayers who paid for this building will not have any input as to how it's functioning, and we need more centers publicly owned. But at the same time, I support this, I support the program, but I do not support privatizing public property.
Okay. Alderwoman Tyus.
First, I want to second what the Alderman has said. I know much more about this probably than most, because before there was Demetrius Johnson, there was a lady named Marie Fowler.
Right.
And she did a lot of the work. I'm hearing all these other names, but you're really leaving out the person who went and got the people you're talking about and who did the background, okay? And if you don't know that name, Flint Fowler, that's his mother.
I know.
And Marie was wonderful. So when I hear people giving all this credit to Demetrius and leaving Marie Fowler out, I'm pained to hear that, okay? Because I remember when she went and got the money, she met the people you're talking about, she went and met with them and the things that she did. So I hate it when people take other people's credit and don't give the proper credit to people who deserve it, okay?
And
My first question.
I apologize for that, for not to mention.
You,
We
no,
have
it's
we
not
have
on
a
you.
park named
It's not
after
on you.
her.
It's on him. Okay. The terms of I'm looking here, I just looked and said, there's 4 lawyers sitting here, 4 female lawyers. This is interesting. The terms of the lease is for 5 years, and then if you decide, then we can renew the lease for another 5 years. Is that correct?
That's correct,
Okay.
unless there's some reason otherwise.
So then I'm looking on page 2, it says grounds for termination. The city determines to sell the property. So how would that occur, and would there be some kind of notification to Mr. Johnson?
Of course, there
Okay.
would be,
And why would we determine that we would sell the property?
because it may be in the city's best interest,
Okay.
in my opinion.
And will we give them a
because
certain
things-
amount of notice?
Yes, and it should be noted in there, typically it's 60 to 90 days, but Alderwoman, I don't see that here, but we would give him, we would not just shutter his doors, or our doors.
I think it is.
It said, on the top of the front page, it says, yeah, but on the front page, it said, may terminate the agreement upon 10 days written notice for calls, which is so, and then it says these are grounds for termination for calls. So for me, as a lawyer, 10 days would be kind of short to tell them. So I'm gonna protect your interest here and say that's a short amount of time
It is,
to say, hey, we decided to sell, and be able to come in and they're running a program and not cover this. So as your lawyer, I wouldn't tell you that this is a good deal for you, okay? I think that's kind of not a good idea.
sure.
I think that should be 60 days or 90 days or something else. I'm just making that suggestion, okay?
which is typical
Right.
city
The
language.
10 days is just ridiculous to me, okay?
Sure,
The rent is $1, right?
right,
Okay. They have to submit to you a business plan.
right, and we would expect that, well, ideally July 1.
Are they actually doing subleases right now?
They are not.
So I guess I see it different, and I don't see why, because if you're a not-for-profit, you need to raise money. And so I've been through the building many years ago, for many times. So I don't understand why they wouldn't do subleases to little small neighborhood groups or something like that, and some kind of income is coming in, okay? So it's really hard. I disagree with the city not buying this and running it in the first place. But if somebody else is gonna do it privately, to me, they ought to find some people that maybe can't pay a lot of rent, but could be in there and they could have a little place where they could help people start up businesses or whatever, so.
Sure. Have you by chance, if you may, Alderman, if I may, have you by chance explored it and lack of interest, any
Well,
interest?
We've had conversations. Well, let me just say this. I appreciate you all, woman, for the statements you made. Let me say, I will make this clear to everybody. We've been blessed to have the opportunity to use.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, but could you take a seat at the table
Oh, sure.
because the
Sorry.
folks that are watching won't.
And I don't want to be taking liberty to ask people to talk if it's not correct for them.
Yeah.
You can have a seat here.
Just the microphones won't be able to pick up.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
But we've been blessed to have the opportunity. I've been blessed to have the opportunity to use and run that facility. It started because of that gentleman over there asked me to do it some years ago when they was going to close the building, and that's why I got involved. I didn't want to get involved, but I did. So I made a true commitment, a personal commitment. So when I hear someone saying that trying to not respect Miss Fowler, that just had nothing to do with it. In fact, we got in Miss Fowler a room, children's library that we do. So I just want to make this clear. If you guys continue to want to give us the building, fine. You know, that's fine. I'm not here to sit up here and tell you what I do. You know what I do in this community. I work my ass off. Nobody get a dime for working in my building. I work a full-time job, a consulting business, got a family I'm raising. He doesn't get paid. Nobody gets paid in my organization. We don't charge kids for nothing, not a dime. We don't charge families for nothing in that building. So when I got to sit up here and hear people think that this is not about me. This is about me. I live out in West County. I can go in West County and stay there forever and never have to come into Sydney and do anything. But I'm telling you, what I want to be able to do is give back to this community, give back to a high rate, and then change lives in this community. That's what we do. That's all we do. I'm not involved in all the other things. So whatever personal issues anybody have with me in there, keep your personal issues. I am about trying to save these kids' lives. It doesn't matter, what I feel personally about anybody at this table, but it matters about me.
So I had I was questioning and I have the floor, and it's not about him either. So my questions will continue to be, and I will have the last word. So I will make points that you don't like, and I will make points that you do like. So I will continue to make my points, okay? Because I'm a member of this Board of Aldermen and the senior one here, okay? So you doing that, it doesn't stop me. Because I also talked about protecting your interests, okay? So listen with both your ears and hear what I'm saying. It's not an attack on you. Okay, so I don't want to yield to him anymore. I want to continue to ask my questions to Greg.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Directed.
Okay, so the hours of operation, as I understand it from page 4, is 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., right?
Correct, that's correct.
Okay.
There are times when he has events where maybe a particular thing going on
So
that we typically.
That wouldn't be a problem if they open early, if they close
No.
late, okay?
No, those are, Alderwoman, those are
Right.
kind of, some of our other 7 rec centers, those are similar to the work hours. Although 8 to noon is at times at our other rec centers not exactly the busiest time.
Okay, and so anything over 10,000 is called a capital improvement, and the city would take care of that?
Right, right.
Okay, thank you. City pays all utilities.
That's correct. I
Okay.
investigated that myself. I had a question about that, but that's how it was written in before, so we simply did it the same. I don't know what those utility costs are on an average for a yearly basis, but I could find out. But yes, the city would pay the utilities, right?
And the insurance, the foundation has to insure the building totally themselves?
Anybody working in a city building must provide bona fide current valid insurance and list the city as an additional insured, which Mr. Johnson does,
Okay.
because of the liability.
I saw in here about that they have to agree to do a living wage. Do we monitor what they pay their employees? Because he said nobody gets paid.
We wouldn't monitor them simply because they don't get paid, as you noted, and if anybody with Vladimir's group would like to investigate that, they could, but I don't believe anybody gets a penny.
But if they were to start having employees,
Yes.
that they would have to be a living wage. And my question then becomes,
Correct.
how do we know that?
How do we know what?
If they were paying their employees a living wage, if they decided to have employees?
We have a monitoring group with the city that monitors that,
Okay.
so they'd be in direct contact with me and Mr. Johnson to investigate that.
So currently, do they have to have a business license to run the facility? Do you know?
Good question. Being a nonprofit, and they may be exempt. Do you know offhand if you have a business license or if the onus is on you to have?
Normally we exempt for those types.
Okay.
I can get that clarification.
Okay. Because I know, and why I asked this is we had a occurrence last year or so when the Madam License Collector changed who had to get a business
Sure.
license, and it was kind of an uproar about that, okay?
I can check with Ms. Thompson.
Okay. And when we talk about service contracts, which are on page 7, what kind of service contracts would we be having if there were such service contracts?
Sure.
What does that refer
Let me
to?
take a look. I think it can run the gamut. I don't think I'm shooting from the hip. It appears maybe that I am. But I think it's any provider that could come in and do similar services that
Like,
we think,
such as?
dance class.
Okay.
I think Demetrius is involved heavily with,
Okay.
with chess club now. So be doing some type of semi-formal arrangement would be a service contract, a provider like we're doing in recreation across the city.
Okay. And they can't do any service contracts with contractors that's been disallowed by the city, so.
Correct,
Okay.
standard language, I believe.
Okay, and if it's over $5,000, they have to enroll in a federal work authorization program?
Correct, standard language. That's kind of more in your bailiwick, Alderwoman being an attorney. So
Okay.
sometimes I try not to
Right.
glaze over that stuff.
I have no further questions except for I still think that you should change the contract. I do not think that a 10-day notice is a fair, and if that's something that could be done, that is not a fair notice to anybody. I own apartment buildings, and that's not even standard. I don't know how that got by you guys, but that
Sure.
should be changed.
Alderwoman, thank you, Chairman and Alderwoman. Is that, in terms of process, is that something we can change with an amendment? Is that something we can work down the, I agree, I think it should be 90 days unless it's an extreme emergency, or 60 days.
So, I mean, we have both parties to the
Correct.
contract in the room, so,
Right.
I mean, if the, other party involved is amenable to changing it to a 90-day period, then I don't see why we couldn't amend the contract now.
Correct. Friendly amendment.
Now, it is en route to E&A as well,
Okay.
so, well, let me ask this, with all due respect, follow-up. A 10-day period is, I mean, those sound like some serious things that could happen, but as you noted, it can be used for other purposes, which could be sold.
So you
I don't want to
really
wing it, but can we keep the 10-day in so we don't disrupt the process and maybe we have an agreement between us? I don't know.
Well, I
I'm
mean,
just,
you can bring an amendment to the contract at a later point in time as well.
okay,
Right,
thank you.
right.
I'd like to do
But I
that,
was-
just so we
right.
keep moving if
Right.
we're fortunate.
You can
Yeah.
even run it by the city council.
So,
Yeah,
Right.
thank you.
Exactly.
great.
But I would suggest that you do that.
I agree with you.
Alderman Bosley?
I don't have any questions. I do have just one question, and this is just kind of, out of curiosity. There's a police station on the, the 6th page, number 16. There's a police station that it says, in a 24-month period, if we were to have the funds, that the city would remove that vacant police station. I just wanted to know, kind of what that would cost, just because, we're working on like a
Exorbitant from what that's an exaggerative term. It would be very costly. I've talked with Rich Bradley about that substation. It would be on the eastern end of that property, and I believe the city is, and Kim may know, we've entertained thoughts of getting rid of that for many years. It's just been cost prohibitive. It's useless to my knowledge, and we just haven't had the funds to demo it. Kim, do you know anything about the police substation attached to the West End Rec?
Not in particular, just that it's
Oh,
not
easy.
Yeah, so
regularly
we got plenty of other
maintained
things to
like the
demolish
center
before that.
zones.
And I'm not passing the buck to my colleague, Rich Bradley, but he's keenly aware of the cost, and we could come up with that, Alderman, I could get you that, but I think Demetrius knows that's just the eastern end of his building that has absolutely no utility except for the prospect of needing to be demolished. But it's kind of cordoned off from, you don't go near that, do you? Right.
Yeah, I was just asking because, you know, I know a lot of these old stations need remediation and things like that. Just kind of trying to, you know, figure out what the numbers would look like.
Sure.
So yeah, it's
It's high,
not a big thing. Just was wondering.
sure.
But other than that, I do appreciate the work that the foundation does. We most certainly need places for these kids to go because that's one of the reasons why they're choosing other options right now because there's not many places to go that you can feel safe in.
I'm not into titles and I'm not into thinking I'm important, but I will, this is commentary too, when I walk in that center, no matter who's in there, it's yes, sir, how are you, good morning. And it is impressive. And some of these kids may be in a nice uniform and you walk in and you walk through the gym and it's like, I purposely say hello. Hey, how are you doing, young man? Hey, sir, I've never had somebody look at me and not speak to me. So whatever Demetrius and Sonny are doing in that regard with respect and basic professionalism for youth, it's impressive because I don't remember going in there without that greeting, and I expect that of my two daughters as well.
Absolutely.
So there's no snide marks, no, hey, who are you? It's good morning, good afternoon, and that's, I think, he helps with that, with their parents or with their guardians or with their family members.
Alderwoman Navarro, I'm sorry.
No, yeah.
Alderwoman
Okay,
Navarro.
Great, thank you. And thank you, both of you, for everything that you're doing. And thank you, Greg, for working on this. I've worked with you before on negotiating a lease with the Parks Department, and I appreciate your due diligence in all of this. And I know with our limited resources, I think when we can find these sorts of partnerships, it really benefits the community. So I appreciate everybody kind of coming together and thinking outside the box to figure out how we can use this space, even though we can't make it into what we want it to be. Just a couple of questions. So one, in terms of going to E&A, this will go before them at their next meeting? Is that the plan?
Yes, it's on tap for June. We were asking several times, is this an E&A item? And it's been determined it is, so that's where it is. But we were kind of struggling to get that answer.
Okay. And then how many other contracts do we have like this with rec centers? Just curiosity.
I don't think we have any. Now, I'll tell you what we do have, and you can make a correlation perhaps. We have the two rec centers at the Y that are run at Carondelet and O'Fallon, which are unique. The other 7 rec centers are run by us. But in terms of contracts, we do have provider contracts that were unprecedented that are starting next month at all our rec centers through the Prop P money. And that's about $500,000 across all 7 rec centers. Those are contracts where people are being paid to provide services. Mr. Johnson's is free. So I don't, other than volunteer groups coming in and teaching a dance class in the past at our rec centers, or just coming in to do anything on a volunteer basis, I would say we don't, this is unique.
Did the city ever run its own programs out of this
Yes.
space? Okay. And
Yes.
so, and that was.
Under Evelyn Rice years ago.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then Marie Fowler stepped in when the city could no longer provide those services. Is that how it worked?
I believe so. I think Alderwoman Tyus and other folks would know more about that, but I've met Marie years ago. I did meet her, and I think she was just a strong community leader that did a lot in that ward.
We have a park named after her.
Right. But
It used to be
I
where
think
Walgreens was.
if it helps to answer your question, I think this is unique, where we have a city building, a provider doing all free services, if you will.
I have no more questions.
Thank
Thank
you.
you again.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so with that, I'll entertain a motion on board bill number 21.
I move that we pass Board Bill 21, the due pass recommendation.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Morton.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley.
Aye.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Aye.
Alderwoman Rice.
Aye.
Alderman Todd. Chairman Cohn.
Aye.
That's 6 aye votes.
With that, Board Bill 21 passes out with a due pass recommendation to the full Board of Aldermen, where it will be taken up for further discussion this coming Friday and following Friday.
I've worked with some of the alderwomen and aldermen here many years, some of you brief period of time. I always respect and appreciate your time, so thanks for the great questions and just, if you think of any after this meeting, you know where I am, so.
Yeah, well, and Greg, with respect to the amendment, if you could just keep us posted if there is
Yes.
one with regard to the 90 days.
Yeah, because what can
Thank you.
happen, because we still gotta do a second reading, so before perfection, if they get to it then, or if they agree to it, and even before it goes to E&A, if, you take it to legal,
Yeah,
okay, and then they okay it and change it a little bit, then she can have a amendment on the floor,
okay,
okay?
I can do that today.
Okay.
Yeah, and
With that, the Parks and Environmental Committee meeting is adjourned.
I really appreciate it, folks.
Thanks.